Billy the Liquor Guy here. The story you're about to hear, Under Too Long, is the story of bombs, drugs, untaxed alcohol, terrorism, and the undercover agents who brought it all down. Thanks for being here. Episode 1. In this episode, we dive into the world of undercover operations, where survival depends on deception and quick thinking. From a tense meeting with the New York Attorney General to a dangerous game with drug dealers, each move is a gamble with life or death stakes. This is how it all began. Let's get into it. Introduction. Who's the guy that just intercepted the bar? The New York State Attorney General inquired. It was late 3 a.m. to be exact, and the general was annoyed. Within minutes of exiting a bar his team had spent months trying to intercept, he'd gotten word of my license plate and car make. And when those numbers came up as an operating vehicle for the Petroleum Alcohol Tobacco Bureau, he went straight to my superior. It's Billy Stanton, the director of my unit, replied. Best undercover we've got. I want to meet him, the general instructed. Have him to my office by morning. I want to meet the agent that's infringing on my team. Infringing was an ironic choice of words since I'd been in the bar to complete a liquor buy, and a measly buy at that. The bar had been so run down and lackadaisical with liquor purchases that my partner, Tony, and I had written it off as a waste of time. To say that we thought there was any suspicious activity going on inside was a stretch, but the New York State Attorney General was interested, so whatever he was looking for must be good. I glanced at the clock, which read 6 a.m. How early you want us there? I said, my body exhausted from the late evening my crew and I had pulled. I'd like you here before 10, Stanton said. We'll work out the details on the drive over. I'll call Tony and arrange it, I said, wiping the sleep from my eyes. I wasn't ready to start my day, but curiosity had me on my feet and ready to go. Billy, Stanton said before we hung up, let's keep this under wraps until we know what's going on. Got it. Got it, boss, I said, and hung up, dialing Tony seconds later. Whether we were ready or not, our undercover careers were about to be put into overdrive. Keeping it under wraps was just a momentary diversion. Soon enough, we'd have over 10 agencies like the FBI, the United States military, and ATF assisting us to take down bombs, drugs, untaxed liquor, and a multi-terrorist unit. And it all stemmed from my ability to transform, relate, and bullshit with degenerates at any given time. Chapter 1. Attorney General. Tony and I reached Stanton's office 5 minutes after his recommended time. You two are late, Stanton said, looking directly at Tony. I could see the heat spread across Tony's face. I felt bad for him in a way. He was a timely guy, built on schedules and factoids. I, meanwhile, required an extra stop for coffee and a breakfast bagel from my favorite spot in Troy. I could feel Stanton's eyes on me. I had on my day-to-day wears, wind pants, sneakers, and a wrinkly t-shirt. You couldn't run an iron over your shirt at least, Stanton said, shaking his head. He wasn't one for fashion either. However, today he sported a crisp white shirt and black dress pants. What do you want from me? I mumbled. You woke me up at 6 a.m. I didn't have time to go shopping, and no one told me they were dressing up. Stanton shook his head and let out an aggravated sigh. Tony, thank you for dressing respectable, he stated. See, there you go. You've got one well-dressed guy on the team, I smiled. Stanton mumbled something and pulled a file from his briefcase. Okay, boys, here's what I've got, Stanton said, leaning forward. The governor created a task force designed to shut down a drug distribution ring throughout New York State. His task force is huge, but from what I can tell, they haven't been able to find a link in the southern tier area. Somehow, you two have stepped into something they've been trying to uncover. This can be a win-win for you, the state, and the Attorney General if you get this one right. Stanton prepped us with facts, names, and requirements as he headed for the state office building in Albany, or the Ivory Tower, as I like to call it. As we walked through the sterile hallways, glares from suits passed my way. They probably think you're our criminal, Tony laughed. Maybe I should have tied my sneakers before I got out of the car. Tony looked down at my laces, which were flopping with each step I took, and sighed. Before Stan could scold me, two gentlemen, both sporting black business suits and sharp ties, stepped in front of us. Mr. Stanton, they said, their hands extended. Stanton, who knew both individuals by name, shook their hands and introduced us. It's a pleasure, the gentleman introduced as San said, shaking my hand. We heard about you breaking into Softail like it was your home base. Kudos on a job well done. That's one bar we've yet to get into. Softail was a low-grade bar that seemed easy to infiltrate, so the acknowledgement took me off guard. Yet by the time I was introduced to Bloom, San's backup, who excitedly praised my work as well, my ego was swimming. It was a great decoy, since once we made our way into the Attorney General's office, my body seemed to trip over itself. So this is what my team was up against, the Attorney General smirked, gesturing to my outfit. I must have really picked from the bottom of the barrel, huh? His jab put me at ease. He was a ball buster, just like any other guy. Along with Stan, Tony, San, Bloom, and the General was the head of the narcotics task force. Some of the bars we found you in have been heavily involved with the narcotics task force for some time, the General said as we all took a seat around the oval table in his office. They've had everyone from the state police to local law enforcement trying to get in, all unsuccessfully. As I am sure your directors informed you, the governor has been adamant about uncovering and stopping drug traffic across the state. What you may not be aware of are the high volume of drugs that run through the southern tier of New York. Drugs are coming into New York City through various points, which we're working on, and then found a line straight to Elmira, a major distribution point for the rest of New York State and Pennsylvania. We believe one of the bars you landed yourself into is part of this wheelhouse in this operation. San went on to discuss the dispatches they'd set across points in Binghamton, Syracuse, Rochester, and various towns that border Pennsylvania. It was clear the Attorney General was desperate to break down the distributions, and San and Bloom were responsible for making sure that happened. The head of narcotics broke down the patrons they'd been pursuing, particularly those who frequented Softail. As he flashed pictures across his PowerPoint screen, he'd stop to display a shot of me, dressed in sweatpants and a dirty T-shirt, talking with the Jamaicans we'd encountered the evening prior. These guys were said to be relevant drug dealers and extremely dangerous. The smiling one I'd warmed up to was the leader. Tony's mouth was hanging open, and he was whiter than I'd ever seen him. We want to sign you on the case with us, the head of the narcotics said, displaying more pictures of Tony and me outside Softail and the Thirsty Bear. I'll admit, we did appear to look buddy-buddy with Nash and the Jamaicans. There was even a shot of Tony cleaning broken liquor bottles out of the van. Stan eyed us about that picture. I guess we've forgotten to tell him about that one. Billy, we have to ask, Stan said, leaning forward. How the hell did you get to be so friendly with these guys so quick? You're in there laughing like you're long-lost friends. Gentlemen, I don't know, I said, pulling my hands up in defense. I think so many people have referred to me as a low-life degenerate all my life that I'm actually not pretending to be one. I don't buy it for 1 minute, San said. You seem to be in the right place at the right time, and we don't think that's by chance. You're a lot smarter than you're playing it. Look, guys, I can't say that I'm not impressed by all this, I said, looking around, but we've just been selling untaxed liquor and cigarettes. From what you're telling me, there's a major drug operation going on that we weren't even aware of. That's not our area of expertise, so anything we stumbled upon happened on dumb luck. Again, we have to respectfully disagree, Bloom replied. You're forging relationships with owners who trust you, and that's what we need to get inside. We need someone they feel comfortable with and trust enough to bring us in. And you think that's something Tony and I can do? I questioned, even though deep down I knew damn well we could. That's why we asked you here, the general replied. We need your help. That's something you're going to have to speak with my director about, I said, looking at Stanton. My loyalty is with my unit and with the operation we've been successfully building. The general highlighted the respect our agency would hold with the governor, the narcotics unit, and his own office, should Tony and I assist him. He spoke about advanced video and sound equipment that they've yet to grant any other agency, additional manpower, vehicles, and a handsome raise. It was hard not to be impressed. Before we proceed, I have to be clear that his first alliance would remain with his agency, Stanton said. As hard as you guys have worked to crack this case, we've worked just as hard to crack ours, and we're close. That sounds reasonable, the general responded. I'd also like to be able to keep my original crew, I stated. You said more manpower, which is great, but the guys I've been working with have busted their ass with me from the start. We have a good rapport with each other. That's how we've gotten as far as we have. I won't come without them. Again, that doesn't seem like a problem, the general said, though I watched the head of the narcotics slump back in his chair. San tossed a key fob across the table. The mic is inside. We can track your audio, location, and deliver video surveillance without raising suspicion with this. I glanced at Stanton, who smiled in approval. Until now, I've been hiding a wire and a beeper. Imagine having to explain why you wore a beeper in today's day and age to a group of bad guys. We want to start working with you as soon as possible. We can have cars and equipment to you within a day, Bloom said. If my partner and I do agree to sign on, we'll also need agreements to the terms of our schedule. We run a consistent itinerary so people know when to expect us. That makes them feel safe. We're hoping to have you back in Softail in a few days, while the fire is still hot, so to speak, Sand said. You can hope for whatever you like, but I won't be going back to Softail or Thirsty Bear until next week. If I begin pushing in or looking eager, it can raise questions, and we've worked too hard to jeopardize that for our agency. The general and the rest of his crew weren't happy, but they knew that for the mission to be effective, they had no choice other than to adhere to what I wanted. And what I wanted was to wait. I respect your discipline, Billy, the general said, rising from his seat and extending his hand. I have no doubt it will all be worthwhile. The general excused himself, leaving Sand and the head of narcotics to finalize vehicle and equipment arrangements. Off the record, the head of narcotics said as we prepared to depart, how the hell did you look at that guy from Softail with a straight face? Kid looks like the fucking Elephant Man. I chose one eye and focused on that. I smiled. I didn't dare let my eyes wander anywhere other than that eye, for fear it would throw me off. Well, the real badasses in that bar are the Jamaicans, not your Elephant Man. They control that bar. It's a thick crowd, so be careful. We're fucking working for the New York Attorney General, Tony screamed as we pulled out of the garage. The New York fucking Attorney General. A smile plastered across Tony's face, acted as a mirror for mine. I can't fucking believe we just sat with the fucking head of narcotics asking us for help, I laughed. Can you imagine the look on their faces when they saw you walking out of the bar with these guys? They must have been shitting their pants, Tony laughed. I guess looking like a slob is a good look for me after all, Stanton, I joked. And I knew those Jamaicans were up to no good, Tony continued. I almost shit myself when he pulled their faces up on the screen. I guess no good depends on which side of the fence you're standing on, because they're no good just got us into the Attorney fucking General's office. Tony and I laughed and rehashed the whole meeting while Stanton quietly sat back, taking in our excitement. Though he didn't join in on our stories, his smile was just as large. This can be huge for you guys, he said after we toned down. The equipment they have and the unlimited vehicles are crazy, but it's something you need to talk to your family about. Take a night and make sure you're comfortable with this. You're talking drugs and gangs here, so it can become very dangerous and extensive. I could taste the opportunity on my tongue. Regardless of what my family had to say, I was in. I spent the rest of the drive home going over the past 24 hours in my head. Almost overnight, I went from slumming cigarettes in a back parking lot to receiving a job proposal from the general's office. Thoughts and scenarios swirled through my head. And in what seemed like minutes rather than hours, I pulled in the driveway of my home. I never said a word to my family. Chapter 2, Line of Cocaine. While I lied through my teeth to my family about what I was doing for work, Tony had been more candid with his. So candid, in fact, that his wife was a little apprehensive of Tony signing on. It's the chance of a lifetime, I reassured him. Tell her if shit gets bad, you can back out, and you have my blessing on that. Billy, we've never dealt in drugs before, Tony said. We don't know the first thing about what to buy, and now they expect us to go in and demand it? How is that going to work? I've already got a plan, I smiled. The fuck you do, Tony muttered. It came to me last night. It's simple and brilliant. Brilliant, Tony questioned, raising his eyebrows. I'm going to bring it right back to the ladies, I smiled. I'm going to tell them I have this hot young chick who's only in it for a line. A line, Tony reiterated. A line, a bump. It means cocaine. I looked it up. Tony shook his head. Anyway, I'm going to tell them my dealer has fallen short and I need a little help, or else I ain't getting laid. You're going to use getting laid as your forefront to get us into the drug business. Yeah, I smiled, proud of my genius plan. You're going to get us fucking killed, Tony said, gripping the steering wheel. That's the dumbest plan you've had yet. Tony, trust me. We make it complicated or somehow walk in saying we need shit for ourselves, they're not going to believe us. This shit is more believable than anything else we could do. Coming up with strategies like this was something I've been producing since my career in Undercover began. They were sharp, quick, and effective. Although, if you asked outside the police realm, they'd call them volatile and offbeat. But that's what made me who I was. I didn't think like cops. Never did. I thought like a criminal, which brings me back to the line. Did it work, you wonder? I think it's fair to wager over $2 million in sales, and the largest takedown in New York State has collateral. Tony and I spent the next 2 days reloading our liquor and playing with all the little accessories that came with our shiny new van. It was fair to say we'd gotten the better end of the stick, as our surveillance crew had to spend their days learning how to maneuver all the new materials and camera equipment. It's a better deal until we get held up at gunpoint for making the bad deal, Tony stated. That'll never happen, I said naively, patting his shoulder. We won't be in it long enough to get that deep. Remember, we say when, and if it gets too risky, we bounce. It's our unit before theirs, remember. That was the deal. Tony didn't respond. Deep down, I wondered if I believed my own lies as much as I thought. The morning of our delivery to Thirsty Bear, Tony was nervous. He questioned what we'd say about the new van, what we'd do if Nash got mad about my drug inquiry, and who would bring the liquor inside if Nash banned us for life. Tony, you're living in the future, I said, searching the radio station for Fox News. We have a new van because the other one broke down. We need drugs because I have woman problems. And unless Nash is short-staffed, he's never allowed us to bring the liquor down to begin with. Tony remained quiet, chewing on the end of his fingernails. By the time we pulled into the parking lot, there was nothing left for him to bite off. Our time within the bars hadn't always been so smooth. Tony and I had been brought into the operation with Stanton under the premise of uncovering untaxed liquor sales through liquor distribution centers. I'd sat idly, waiting for any type of new gig, while mourning the crew and supervisor we'd recently lost in the towers. So I wasn't as quick to jump up and give my unimpressed input at first. Frankly, I was just happy to have been taken from my desk and the watchful eyes of Eternal Affairs and brought back into the field. Sitting in a quiet office every day, imagining Supervisor Mills helping the several people down the stairs and out of the crashing towers, haunted me. I'd try and look through old files and drum up a new case, but his wife's eulogy would pop into my head. He died remaining true to who he was and doing what was instilled in him. He died a hero. For months, stories of the man who pulled co-workers off an elevator and down the stairs, helped a frantic woman who was being trampled, and yelled for people to keep moving as the roar of the building caved in above them. I kept those stories and his wife's words with me as I tried to imagine how to go on. And then, just when I seemed to reach a mental breaking point of day-to-day nothingness, Mills' appointed replacement, Stanton, called. As a previous assistant director for our New York City agency, Stanton was recognized for the strong moves he'd made in the field. He was bold, daring, and known for his high intelligence and successful reverse sting operations. However, his appearance let people think otherwise. This guy had long white hair pulled into a low ponytail at the back of his neck and a long beard. He didn't dress like other superiors. Instead of a suit, Stanton sported cargo pants and flannel shirts. Rumors had spread that Stanton was pulling files on all employees for a large internal investigation he was conducting. It was a method said to be responsible for the renewed success of 2 downstate operations he was running. It was also a method that made us wait 3 long months after 9/11 before our phone rang. Only the call wasn't for a case, it was for my pulled file. The battle of emotions on the drive down to Stan's office left me nauseous. I knew he was going to be on to something big, and I wanted nothing more than to be part of that. Yet, as a desire for a future filled with possibilities crept into my head, so did the negative connotations. I assumed Stanton had asked around about me, and my reputation was less than par. I'd taken some inappropriate digs with my superiors, refused direct commands from Deputy Chief Booth, and didn't always play by the books. Agree with those ideals or not, I spent the ride up the marble elevator, wondering if my pulled file was about to be long-awaited dismissal from the agency. "Welcome, Bill." Stanton said he rose from his brown leather seat to shake my hand. "I was just going over your file with a few of the agents. Pretty interesting stuff you've got here." As I took a seat across from him, I noticed my file spread open on a desk full of highlights and post-it notes. "I called you here because your file shows you took a break during your career to operate a bar." "That's correct," I said, twisting my hands together. "I'd like to know a little bit more about your role in the bar, if you don't mind." "Well, I owned it," I stated, shifting to my chair. "My buddy and I thought it would be a good idea at the time. The bar was for sale in a decent location, and we knew a lot of people, so against better judgment, we bought it." "Your file says that you stayed there for 7 years. That doesn't sound like poor judgment to me." "No, it was a good fit for me at the time," I said, meeting Stanton's stare. "But as the years went on, I realized that I wasn't doing what I truly enjoyed. I'd always wanted to be in the investigative field. I think I just got distracted for a bit." "Billy," Stan said, leaning forward, "for the record, I'm not here for the history bullshit. I don't care why you left the field or why you came back. What I want to know is how much of a presence you held within the bar." "Well, I showed up every afternoon, around 2 or 3, stayed until we closed. It was my business, so I was there every day." "So, I'm sure you saw things that weren't always ethical," Stan said, his long ponytail falling over his shoulder. "I think it would be hard to miss, yes." "Let me cut right to the chase, Billy," Stan said. "I'm looking to tap into the untaxed liquor distribution that's been hitting New York State, and your past makes me think you might be an interesting fit." Stan said back, studying my reaction, which jumped from shock to excitement. I wasn't losing my job. "I'm interested," I said, sitting forward a bit too eagerly than I'd liked. "I'm glad to hear you say that," Stan smiled. "I've been watching you. I think you've got what it takes to be a good undercover officer. Have you ever thought about dipping into that side of law enforcement before?" "It's never been presented in a serious matter before, but I think I would be great at it. I've never had your typical cop demeanor." "I agree," Stan stated. The dress pants and tie I'd worn, thanks to my wife, had been closing in on me since the moment I stepped out of the house. "I think your upstate office gets the brunt end of the stick. I'll admit, I dismissed your unit as small-town civil workers as much as anyone else. But after evaluating your unit, I realized that philosophy is wrong. You guys are up there working hard, not giving a shit about the other stuff that goes on inside the office. I saw an openness and desire to learn and grow from every one of your guys. And let's not forget to mention how huge everyone is. There wasn't one person that appeared to be under 6 foot. You're all big and burly, like you ate trees or some shit. We need a little ass kicking like that down here." What Stan said was true. We are harsher than your typical downstate cops. None of my guys cared about what shoes matched their uniform or if their hair was fixed. They cared about going to work, busting out their shit, and heading back home or down the street to their favorite bar. They were dirty, rough, and not always the most articulate, but they meant business and they always got the job done, no matter what the cost. "I do have one question I need to know before we move any further," Stanton asked. "What's the deal with you and Booth?" There it was. The question I worried would spear my file. Well, he's my superior, and I respect him in the field, but that's about it, I stated. Really? Because he didn't have the nicest thing to say about you. In fact, he said you were a bullshit artist with no real skills. That's because he's a jealous asshole, I spat, happy to finally say the words out loud. I had a chance for Boots' position. I turned it down, he can't get past that. He's so worried about everyone learning that I scored higher than him for Boots on the Chiefs test. A test he didn't even pass, that instead of doing right and making a name for himself, he'd rather go out of his way to bust my balls. He's a prick who opts to sit back and complain rather than make something for our agency and himself. That I can't respect. That's what I was hoping you'd say, Stanton smiled. Now that I can trust you, let's get to work. The job, Stanton informed me, required me to go to Undercover school, a school I never knew existed. It's a formality, Stanton said. I can't send you on the streets without it, but it's only a few weeks and it'll teach you things to keep you out of trouble. I agreed to go before Stanton finished his sentence. I'd never been one for classes or tests, but for the first time in my life, I couldn't wait to get started. Those first missions were only the tip of the iceberg, testing my nerve, loyalty, and instincts at every turn. But the deeper I got, the clearer it became that there was no easy way out. The real battles were just starting. Stick around. This story is only getting more intense from here.